Now, here's Casey Ingram.
Welcome to the show. A beautiful Wednesday here in our lovely Stuart, right off the St. Lucie River. And we continue on with our Meet Your Candidate series today, folks. And before we go into all that, I want to really thank Indiantown Marine Center. They strive to provide their customers with an efficient and user-friendly location for servicing and storing their vessels while still maintaining cleanliness, environmental quality, and safety. They provide dockage, travel lifts, workspace, long-term storage, and other repair and maintenance services, as well as offering a convenient hurricane haul-out program. And you know that's important this time of year. Indiantown Marine Center is a contractor yard, and it can provide a list of approved contractors that their customers can engage in with no markup or gate fees. Customers are also welcome to bring their own contractor, provided pre-approval is given before starting the work. Give the good folks a call at Indiantown Marine Center, 772-597-0800, 597-0800, or look them up online, IndiantownMarineCenterFL.com. So in the studio, as I said, we have another Meet Your Candidate series, and folks, we're coming down to the wire here. So I really wanted to focus on our local races here in Martin County, and I have invited each candidate that qualified back for an hour show. Almost all of them have accepted that invitation, and today is no exception. And we're going to start out with the Martin County District 3 race, and I have Frank Diambro. And Frank Diambra, not Diambro.
Diambra, yes.
Got the bro going. He is running for District 3 Martin County Commission. District 3, folks, so is currently held by Commissioner Harold Jenkins, who is not running for re-election. There are 3 candidates in this race. Frank Diambra, there's Blake Capps, and then we have Susan Gibbs Thomas
yes,
out from Indiantown. So this is going to be a race to watch for certain. Beyond that, I want to let everybody know the primary is when this race will be decided. That's August 20th. Race 1, which is District 1, is a closed primary, so you need to be registered as a Republican to vote in that race. And if you're going to do that, you need to change your registration by July 22nd. Super easy to do. You go to martinvotes.org, check your status, and you can change it right there online. And after the race, you can change it back to whatever party you wish to. And folks, it does not disenfranchise you from any races to change your party before that primary. You need to do that by July 22nd. Also, next week, we're going to have a special here in the studio between Michael Circus and Bruce Nathan. They are in District 5, and they will be in together to kind of debate the issues. So that's another thing that we're offering here in the studio. If you ever choose to want to do that with your opponents live, we'll go ahead and do that. And it's a special setup where you actually ask each other questions. So
I'd be more than happy to participate.
Fantastic.
If the others are willing.
We'll see if we can get something like that set up. So, again, in the studio, I have Frank Diambra, and this is the whole hour is going to be dedicated with Frank. Folks, I'm watching my Facebook Live video. Please ask your questions through Facebook Live. We cannot take live calls during the show because we have no way to screen them, to be honest with you. So put your questions in on Facebook Live, and I'll pass them on to Frank. Frank is committed to preserving the Martin County difference. Frank fits the mold of a Reagan conservative who believes in limited government, fiscal responsibility, strong public safety, equal application of the rule of law, responsible environmental stewardship, transparency, and accountability. Frank Diambra III has been an active member of the communities in which he and his family have resided. In September of 2023, Frank moved with his extended family, including his wife Lisa, 2 daughters, and 3 grandchildren to Martin County. Previously, the family had lived in the village of Tequesta for 20 years. During his time in Tequesta, Frank served 5 terms as council member, serving as mayor, vice mayor, and chairman of the Recreation Center Building Committee. Prior to Frank's time on the council, he served as a chairperson of the Tequesta Public Safety Pension Board and as a member of the village's audit committee. Frank was born in Rhode Island and has since lived in almost every corner of the United States. Frank met his wife Lisa while attending law school at the University of Miami. He has over 30 years of experience in the retirement and financial services industry, having held senior executive positions for Horace Mann Educators Corporation, Swiss Reconning Investors, and GE Financial Corporation. He was then a founding investor and COO in a local medical device startup. Poisis Medical.
That's how you pronounce it, yep.
He and Lisa are the proud parents of 3 grown children and are blessed with 4 grandchildren. Welcome to the show, Frank.
Thank you, Casey. I'm happy to be here.
We're really excited that you're here as well. There's a lot of things that we're going to cover. First of all, your race is one that's going to be heavily watched because it's one of the seats that does not have an incumbent in it. So we have three fresh faces for that seat.
Yep.
And what made you decide to run for this seat?
Well, 2 things. You already mentioned that we moved the entire extended family to Martin County, and that was a conscious choice on our part. And this is where the extended family is laying down roots. So what happens within the county as we go forward, obviously, is of great personal concern. The other thing is I'm a strong believer in public service, and everywhere we've lived, to the extent that my work schedule permitted it, I was engaged in various community activities. Obviously, when we moved to Tequesta, I was able to step that up by serving the community, through a public elected office on the council. So when I came up here, I knew a lot of people up here. Obviously, Tequesta's right on the border there with Martin County.
North Tequesta is Martin County.
Yeah, it is Martin County. And so, I know quite a few people in Stewart, in Martin County. In fact, I may have mentioned this the last time we spoke, but our village manager, the chief of police, the chief of fire, and the village attorney for Tequesta all live in Martin County, interestingly enough. So when I got up here and I started talking with folks about issues and concerns and what was happening within the community and the direction it was taking, and we were sharing ideas back and forth, what I found was a lot of people were encouraging me to run. They said, you really need to put your hat in the ring and run for office. And I said, well, let me think about it, talk to my family, let me pray about it. And ultimately I decided, the best way I could serve the community, if in the foreseeable future, would be through public office again. So that's why I decided to run.
So, Frank, you're in a really tough race, and I want to get right to the nitty-gritty here.
Sure.
Your opponents have each raised about $50,000
Correct.
each. You have just self-funded to this point.
That is correct.
What is your strategy to get your name out there to meet folks? Because you are a new name to the community.
Yes.
Even though you live just a few miles down the road, it is a new name to the community, where the one has been the mayor of Indiantown, the other one has a roofing company in the area. So that's a lot of things to overcome as far as name recognition.
Yeah, and they're both lifelong residents. You're correct. At this point, I have self-funded, and I do have quite a few people that are lined up to provide donations. But again, I'm going to be very intentional about who I accept money from. I'm not going to accept money from any developers. I don't want there to even be an appearance of conflict. I think public servants have to be above that, and they have to be able to. People have to have confidence that when issues come up before the commission, that the commissioners are independent. They're going to look at things objectively, and they're going to look at things in the best interest of the community, not in the best interest of a particular company or individual. So while I will be taking donations, again, very intentional about who they come from.
What would you bring to the Board of County Commissioners that you see is lacking right now, and also that you can bring over your opponents?
Okay. Well, I think what I bring is a wealth of both business and public service experience. On the business side, the first 30 years I spent was in the retirement plan industry. So we designed, implemented, administrated, and invested retirement funds. So very financially oriented career path. And then obviously when we moved down here, I got involved in a medical device startup as a COO. So a different industry, but a lot of the analytical skills and a lot of the financial knowledge I had obviously was very applicable to that particular business as we were getting it started. So I think in terms of my financial background, my ability to look at budgets, operations, like I said, the last 3 positions I held in the retirement industry were what I would call general management positions, where I actually ran businesses. So I had hundreds of people reporting to me. We had sales, in the $4 billion range. We had assets over $10 billion that we were managing. So those experience in terms of running businesses, running operations, trying to make sure that we were working as efficiently and as effectively as we possibly could, on behest of our shareholders, I think those same types of financial skills, when applied into the government arena, because even though government and businesses are a little bit different in terms of their objectives and their measurables, when it comes down to the way they operate, they need to operate as efficiently, as effectively as possible. And every tax dollar that comes in is precious, and that dollar belongs to the citizens.
For sure.
So it's the commissioner's job to make sure that that dollar is being spent very, very wisely, and it's being spent to deliver the goods and services that the citizens are looking for. And then on the public side, again, I was on the council for 10 years, so I'm very familiar with the issues that come up both from a state, county, and a local basis. And I understand the importance of building relationships, building relationships not only with the citizens but with the staff and with other levels of government in order to again be as effective as you possibly can in delivering for the citizens of the county. So I think both my public and my private experience, I think, are very well suited for this particular position on the commission.
We have a question here from listener Elaine. What were your feelings about the Love Street fiasco when the commercial fishermen were evicted? Do you and will you support Port Salerno Commercial Fishing Dock Authority?
That's an interesting question. Love Street, of course, was Jupiter, wasn't Tequesta, but they're right. There was a lot of controversy, and I was not a big fan of what transpired at Love Street. I think there was a heritage there, and I think they could have done a much better job to accommodate the commercial fishing fleet that was operating out of that site. At the same time, they were, seeking to redevelop that property. So, when it comes to Port Salerno, I know again that you've got a big commercial fishing presence there, and I believe that presence needs to be retained as they go forward.
Fantastic. So you just moved here recently to Martin County, even though you were just a year ago.
Just about a year ago.
Just a year ago, even though you just were over the line.
Yes.
The county line. So certainly no stranger to the area. We have a tagline, as you know, called the Martin County Difference.
Correct.
What is that difference to you?
For me, it refers to a couple of things. One is the density of the county, which compared to the counties to the south and the counties to the north, obviously is far less. But what it really means is you've got a county where you've got a tremendous amount of open space, agricultural, park, environmentally sensitive lands that are really an attribute to the county and a real reason why people come here. So again, I'm kind of being a little redundant, but when you look at the three counties to the south and the density and the number of people and the development that have taken place, or you look to St. Lucie County to the north and you see what's happening there, no one I've spoken to wants to see that kind of development happen here. That Martin County difference, that open rural sense of the community, they want to see that maintained, and I'm 100% behind that.
So where do you stand right now? I'm sure you're well aware because one of them was right there on Bridge Road, and that's the Becker Farms, Tree Farms. We had an amendment to our comp plan, and it keeps getting amended a little bit more, and our western ag lands are becoming, there's a lot of good advantages and disadvantages to basically this cluster housing type of development. Where do you stand on those comp plan amendments for our western lands? Is cluster housing, meaning a certain portion of that land and a good portion of it is put into conservation and perpetuity,
Correct.
and then they cluster 300 houses in one area?
Yes.
Is that a good thing for our western lands? Do you support that? Where do you stand on that issue?
I do support the concept of clustering, and we may have talked about this last time as well, but we moved into what was the first eco-community in Howard County, Maryland. Howard County is somewhat similar to Martin, and that is more of a rural community. And depending on where in the county you were, it was either one home for every 5 acres, or as you move towards what would be closer to what Martin County calls an urban development district, it was one home for every 3 acres. So we bought into a community called Paternal Gift Farm. It was a family-owned farm. Parents had passed away. There were three children. One of them already had built a house and lived on the property. The other two obviously wanted to see it developed and get the land value from it. So what they did is they went to the county. Now, they didn't require a quote-unquote comprehensive plan amendment. They were able to actually go to the county commission and ask simply for a variance that said, rather than building 35 homes on 105 acres, let us build 35 homes on 35 acres, and we'll preserve the balance of the land as pasture and natural woodlands. So we bought in. We were probably one of the first 10 homeowners. But one of the keys to this was when we got to a certain, I think when we got to 20 homes that had been built and sold, the land transferred over to what was the HOA. Actually, it was set up as an incorporated entity, Paternal Gift Farm. But the land transferred over, and it came with deed restrictions that basically said this land can never be developed. The benefit, obviously, was instead of disrupting 105 acres with infrastructure and homes spread out, which also makes it a little more challenging when police or fire have to come in to a community. Mm-hmm. They were able, by clustering it, 70 of the 105 acres basically remained undisturbed. So I think there's a real benefit to the concept of clustering. As you already mentioned, if you look at the agricultural areas, they can have one home per 20 acres. So do you want to put 50 homes on 1,000 acres and disturb 1,000 acres worth of land, or would you rather maybe cluster those 50 homes on 100 acres, much less impact to the land? You still get probably maximum value for the property that you're developing. And again, when police and fire have to service those areas, much easier for them to do so.
Less roads, less streets
less
to have
roads,
to travel
less streets,
down.
Sewer lines, water, the whole bit. And then you're able to preserve the balance of the land. Now, the key is you need to make sure that land is truly protected. What you don't want happening is 5 years later somebody comes back and says, oh, well, okay, I know we developed the first 100 acres, but now we got 900 more. Now we want to do something more there. So there needs to be very, very strong, and this is what people have said to me, their concerns are the guarantees against development of the balance of the land strong enough to ensure that it stays as open space or is preserved in some way, shape, or form. So whether you do it through deed restrictions, conservation easements, other actions, I think there's things we can do that would strengthen and assure people that, okay, if you allow clustering, that the balance of the land will stay in as an open space area.
Again, we're speaking with Frank Diambra III, and you can remember the third because you're running for District 3.
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Absolutely. And that's some really good follow-up. If you're unable to catch the show today, it will be on YouTube, the Casey Ingram Show on YouTube. You can catch it anytime there. Amy Pritchett, she's one of our school board members here in Martin County. She is asking, are you supportive of the Martin County Forever sales tax?
Supporting schools.
No, that is the tax for conservation
for the conservation lands. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. Yeah, because I know there's both of them are coming.
It was
up.
confusing. She's a school board member,
yes,
so yes.
Yes. Yeah, I am. I know they've identified some lands for that to be used for, but and I think there's some other opportunities out there as well. But yes, I am supportive, and I think they're going about it the right way. It's going to the voters, so the voters get to weigh in on this. But if voters ask me, would you support this? I would say absolutely yes, because I think giving the county the ability to acquire and maybe work with or in concert with some of the nonprofit groups that are looking to acquire, environmentally sensitive and open land. I think anything we can do to further that effort, I think again is very much in the community's interest. It coincides with the Martin County difference. And from what I'm hearing from people, that's what they want to be able to maintain.
And personally, for myself, I love being part of the process. I know we have elected officials to represent our interests, but a lot of times I disagree with how they're voting. It's wonderful, something this large, that it really
Yes.
is up to the community. So that's something that's special as well. I want to jump back to that comp plan amendment in the Western lands and cluster housing. One of the issues that we have pro-growth and slow growth factions. The slow growth faction says, okay, that's great, but golf courses are going in. That's the open space. Is that really what you call conservation of land and ag land? So on the flip side, I believe that those lands are zoned for golf courses,
They are.
Your hands are tied. But what would you say to those folks?
Well, you made an important point, which is the zoning already permits it. And you do run into an issue when you try to change zoning after the fact, because people can perceive that as a diminishment of private property rights. And when that happens, oftentimes when they sue, they're successful, which means that the county then has to bear the legal costs of defending that suit, as well as any damages that might accrue from having inappropriately denied what is already an approved use. Having said that, though, I think the commission does have weight that they can bring to bear on any of these projects. And I think any developer coming in that wants to be in good standing within the community is going to want to try and do the right thing and do it in concert with the community's interests. So I think there's a negotiation or a give and take that can occur there to try and make sure that whatever does go in there and whatever other lands surround it are in fact protected, going forward. You could look at changing the zoning, but as I said, that comes with certain pitfalls. So, in some cases, you might be able to take some action in that regard, but you got to be real careful. And that's just the reality of the situation.
It is. Again, we're speaking with Frank D'Ambra, Martin County Commission, District 3. I'm going to write a letter that was just sent in to our county commissioners, just a portion of it.
Okay.
It's about affordable housing. So my question for you while I'm reading this letter, and you can think about it, is this is a real issue for people that live in this county, and I'd love to hear your thoughts and solutions. I'm writing in regards to the increase in rent charges and pet fees, which may render us unable to continue living in this community. When we first moved into our apartment, we were paying $719 per month after initial pet deposit and security deposit. Our rent has steadily increased since then and has now gone up another $100 this year to $1,440 per month. We learned today that there will be an additional $450 pet deposit fee upon renewal of our lease, as well as an additional new $30 per month charge. This increases our rental expenses by a total of $2,010 over the next year. Needless to say, our wages will not increase enough to cover this and rising cost. This is just one example of many of people that are being outpriced to their homes, whether they rent or looking to purchase.
And it's a problem, and it's a problem not only in Martin County, it was a problem in Palm Beach County as well, and it was a problem in the village at Tequesta. I mean, we have a situation where many of the people who work in our businesses, particularly the small businesses, or our teachers, or our fire personnel, or our police, oftentimes can't afford to live in the communities that they're part of. There's no easy answers to this question. I think going forward, again, I don't see the county getting directly involved in building anything, but I think the government can act as a facilitator, as a catalyst, to try and work with developers to develop the kind of housing that would aid and assist in people being able to live here with costs that are more representative of the income levels of the community. But this is kind of there's two elements to this. One is obviously the rental component, which is where people usually start off. And I know, for example, there's a project on US 1 that theoretically has an affordable housing or an attainable housing component to it. That's rental. But for the one bedrooms, they're $1,750.
Right.
This is in the affordable portion. And if it's a two bedroom, it's $2,500. Well, if you say you shouldn't really spend more than a third of your income on housing, well, at $2,500, that means your income's got to be $7,500 a month or $90,000 a year.
Doesn't seem real affordable to most folks.
It's not real affordable. So, there's work to be done there. I think the other thing, too, is that it's not only getting people into rentals, it's getting people into homes so that they can build some equity and they can build some wealth. And Commissioner Jenkins and I have talked about this. I think post his service on the commission, he's going to be focusing on the concept of a community land trust. And I don't know, he may have spoken to you.
He's been in the show with
okay,
that,
so
yes.
he's spoken about that as well. So he and I had an at-length conversation, and I'm very supportive of that concept. Hugh Dunphy, who's the CFO in Delray Beach, used to be the CFO in Tequesta. Delray Beach has got a very, very successful community land trust program, getting people into homes. So you and I have been talking, and we're going to be talking more about the concept, the role of that Delray plays in all this. Again, it's a private initiative, but again, I think government can always help to facilitate or act as a catalyst to move these kind of things along. So again, no easy answers to this. Again, I think it's a matter of looking for opportunities to work with folks, both on the rental and on the home ownership side, because rentals are great as a starting point. Like my grandkids are going to eventually, hopefully, be here. They're going to have a place to live. But ultimately, you do want to move people into home ownership. I mean, it makes quote a wonderful life. It makes people just better customers.
The American dream.
The American dream, and so to find ways that we can assist people and help with getting ownership where they can, as we said, build some equity, build some wealth through their homes, I think is something that we really need to be focused on for them.
Are the Marty buses in the area necessary?
I think, again, given the makeup of the community, I think for some people they really are. I think without those buses, a lot of people would have a very difficult time. As we talk about affordability, right?
Right.
Not everybody can afford a couple of cars, and if you've got a couple that's working and they're working at different jobs or whatever, I think for many people, those buses are essential to getting them to and from work. So the answer is, I think, yes, they're needed at this point.
Do the firefighters deserve the 12% raise they received plus a 6% step up every year that they get?
Well, that's the current contract.
Mm-hmm.
It's reflective, obviously, of the economic environment we're in. But going beyond that, having qualified personnel that are well trained and are able to do their jobs effectively means you have to be competitive in your compensation. Doesn't mean you have to be the highest paid, but it means you got to be in a competitive range. So somewhere in that, 50th, 40th percentile, because you want to attract and retain these people. And when people leave, the cost of hiring somebody else and retraining them and equipping them and all the things you go through, there's a significant cost to that, and it can impact the level of service as well. So, the reality today is that there's tremendous demand for highly qualified people, both in police and fire. So if you want to, again, attract and retain the good people to provide you with the kind of service you would expect when you need them, you're going to have to compensate them at a reasonable level. It's kind of like that old MasterCard commercial, right? When you need that person, if you had a family member that suffered a serious injury or had a heart attack or something of that nature, and they come out to take care of that person, you want to know you've got well-trained, well-qualified people in those roles. And at that point, it's priceless, as they say. And so the economic reality today is you've got to stay competitive. If you look at Palm Beach County, for example, there are 4 or 5 municipalities that are actually opening up their contracts midterm and giving raises. Now, in the situations I'm going to cite, it's to police, but they're opening their contracts midterm and they're providing significant bumps in compensation because they want to, again, retain the really good people they have. And these people have families; they're trying to support their families. We know what inflation's been like. Under Biden, prices are up. So they say 21%. I think it's actually a lot more than that in a lot of categories. So they've got to be able to take care of their families. And again, other municipalities are taking actions to make sure they can attract and retain. Martin County's got to do the same thing.
On top of that, I want to talk about this a little bit more because, frankly, when you have a house fire, you get in a car accident, it doesn't matter what they're paid. You are grateful they're there.
Exactly.
Right? So there's that aspect of it. But then this is something that comes up. And last year, we gave the 12% raise to the firefighters, and then the sheriff came in and wanted a 12% raise, and then he got his 12% raise, and then lo and behold, the county staff said, well, wait a minute, our county administrator, county attorney, and got to look at county employees now. That was not approved. That was something that was kind of put on the back burner. But let me go into the details a little bit more. Martin County is about 160,000 people. You
Correct.
brought up Palm Beach County. It's almost 10 times the population.
Yes.
So I'll go with the administrators here. In Indian River County, a county north of here, very similar to our size, the administrator is about 205,000, and the attorney was 194, where ours is 228 and 218,000. So we're already above a county similar to ours. Mm-hmm. St. Lucie County, they're more than twice our size. Their county attorney was 211,000, or 211,000 for the administrator, and 243 for the attorney. So ours comparatively, when you're looking at salaries, are you as a commissioner going to take into account, yes, these other counties are making more money, but are you really comparing apples to apples? Because we have a population of 160.
Yeah.
The firefighters in Palm Beach County, the county administrator, the county attorney are dealing with 1.6 million people. So,
Well, they are. It depends. You're right. The populations are bigger. Although when you look at, I'm going to get off a little bit on a tangent for a moment.
No, this is what it's about.
When you look at Palm Beach County, for example, you've got 37 municipalities. Now, they don't all have fire and police departments, but many of them do. For example, Tequesta has both its own police and its own fire. In a certain portion of that population obviously is served not by the county, but by the municipalities that people live within. Those municipalities, again, just like as with the county, they got to be competitive to attract and retain good people. So, what happens at the county level, or what happens even within the municipalities, obviously, one affects the other. When you look at Martin County, you're right. You've got a smaller population base, but you still got a large geographic area, and you still want, as you said, quality service. I mean, if somebody has a heart attack,
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
You're
You
grateful
want to
they're
know
there.
you've got really good people that know what the heck they're doing in order to save that person's life, or whatever the circumstance might be. So, again, you do need to stay in those jobs. You've got to stay competitive. The fact that somebody, Palm Beach County's, 10, from where I live, it's 6 miles away. From up here in Stewart, it's 15 miles away.
Because they can live here and work there.
They can live there and work there,
the
exactly, and make more money. And there are people that are doing that. Mm-hmm. So you got to stay in that competitive ballpark. And what your HR staff is charged with is doing salary surveys. So every 2 or 3 years they should be going out and looking at the representative salaries in the communities that are around them. And again, you don't have to be at the very top, but you've got to be able to say you're competitive. If not, you're going to lose people. And again, there's a significant cost when you lose good people and you have to try and replace them. And the other problem is you can bring people in and you can train them and educate them, and you get them up to speed, and they're 2 to 3 years in their career, and all of a sudden they're like, well, I can go down over here and make 10% more, 15% more. That then you've got a revolving door, and you just don't want that with these individuals. You've got to have quality people in these roles. Now, when you get to some of the other positions, you were mentioning the county attorney and some of the other roles, again, there I think there is consideration given to the size of the community, the workload that they have, the challenges that exist, let's say within a Martin County versus a Palm Beach, which is much bigger. Again, I think in that arena too, you look at where you need to be competitively to attract people to live here. I mean, the cost of living here is not inexpensive, but it's not quite as high, for example, as living in Palm Beach County at this point in time. So I think there are some elements like that you can take into account when you look at the salaries, across the board. Again, you still want to be in a competitive ballpark, or otherwise people will look for alternative opportunities.
And I appreciate that. That's certainly a discussion that will come up, and I completely agree on the emergency responder issues. And then with the administrative staff that's here in the county, county commissioners are paid according to the population of the county.
Yes, they are.
That's state statute. So it's interesting to me when county employees bring in, let's compare our county administrator to Miami or Palm Beach or Broward. It's like, that's not the same, as a resident here, that's not an apples to apples comparison. We should be comparing to Indian River County and other counties of similar size.
Well, and that's why I said, in the case of the non-emergency responding people, again, you still want good people and you want to attract good people. But again, you look at what are the demands that are being placed on them, the complexity of the jobs, the kind of challenges they have. And you're right. The reality is there may be some similarities, but what you face in a Palm Beach or a Dade or Broward County is very, very different than what you face up here. So you're right. Your comparisons need to be with similar sized communities of similar character or demographics.
Do you feel there's any disconnect between government employees on the upper echelon and just the general public as far as pay scales? Because we are talking, here in Martin County, people are having a struggle, as I just read,
Yep.
paying $1,400 a month for rent, and county attorneys and over 200,000 an administrator wanting a 12% raise on top of that. It's just like, to the general public, the optics of it. Do you see that could be an issue that maybe needs to be addressed? Optics wise.
Yeah. Optics. When you talk about optics, it's a matter of, okay, what is it that when you look at the nature of the job and what this person's responsible for, and again, if somebody's really good, they could be attracted away to somewhere else. But when you look at the nature of the job and responsibilities, you want to take that into account, obviously, in assessing, okay, what value does this job have? And again, you can't do it in isolation. So as you said, you got to compare it to similar type environments, similar type situations, and say, okay, we want to be competitive. We want to attract and retain good people, but what's an appropriate level? And that's where, the HR department doing salary surveys and looking at, as you indicated, similar type of environments has a responsibility to make sure that the income levels are appropriate to the position.
Again, we're speaking with Frank D'Ambra. He's running for Martin County Commission District 3. So, Frank, what kind of commissioner are you going to be? And by that, I'm going to ask directly. Staff recommends a lot of things. There's a lot of things that come across the commissioner's plate. Mm-hmm. So, are you a commissioner that says, I'm paying for the best staff, I've got the best staff, I take their advice, and that's that? Are you a commissioner that's going to read through every agenda item and question why is this here? What is Frank as a commissioner? How does he operate?
That's a good question. At this point in my life, I guess I'm technically retired, even though I told my wife I don't want to be retired yet. But that actually means that I know this is technically a part-time job, but it basically means for me it's going to be a full-time position. So when it comes to staff, and again, I'll look at what I did historically when I was on the council in Tequessa. The commissioners, by law, cannot direct the activities of staff. But that doesn't mean they can't build relationships with staff, and they should build relationships with staff and have a pretty good knowledge of who these people are, what their capabilities are, et cetera. And when issues come up, even though you're not by law able to direct them, but when issues come up where perhaps they've put something forward and maybe you think otherwise, you need to be able to sit down with those folks and say, okay, let's have a conversation. You're telling me this is the direction we should be going in, and this is the analysis that you base it on. Let's look a little deeper into that. And if sometimes even if what they've recommended is sound, you want to play devil's advocate. You want to really challenge the thought process and the thinking behind it, and make sure that it's sound and it's reasonable. And if it's not, okay, then you want them to rethink and go back to the drawing board again. So if you have good staff, am I going to be willing to listen to what they have to say? Absolutely. Am I going to be afraid to challenge them or challenge their thinking? Even if I agree with it, I may still play devil's advocate and challenge it to make sure that ultimately whatever decision I make is something that I have a strong belief in. I think as a commissioner, we are public servants, and it is our job to represent the interests of the community as best we can. And that is always going to be foremost in my mind when I'm dealing with any issue that's before the commission or with any staff member that's before that is working in concert with the commission.
It's really tough being a commissioner right now, I have to say, because there's a lot of things that are out of the commissioner's control, meaning insurance, even the housing cost, but insurance cost. It just seems to be skyrocketing, and their wages are not keeping up. It's inflation.
Yep.
So, with that being said, and this is a two-part question. I'm going to go to Amy Pritchett here on Facebook again, talking about cost. Okay. An interesting comparison is how much IRC, Indian River County, pays for their Marty service. It's around $4 a ride. Ours is around $36. That's kind of an interesting statistic. And we asked about Marty earlier. You said, yes,
Yep.
It's needed. Does that change your perspective or mind on the Marty bus?
It doesn't necessarily change my perspective on the necessity of it. It does change my, knowing that does change your perspective on how well that Marty's being run and how effectively the dollars are being utilized, and are there routes that are really underutilized and not truly needed? So I think there's a lot, again, operationally, there's an opportunity here to look at what's actually taking place, the way it's being run, the costs that are being incurred, and look for ways to enhance and improve that service and make it far more economically efficient.
Yeah, there's a reason they're around $4 up there. I don't know what it is, but it would be interesting to find that out. Are you a commissioner, an elected official that believes that it's a good thing for government to run businesses that could otherwise be ran by a private party? We have Sailfish Sands, the golf course, and the golf hitting bay. We have snack shacks out at the beach. We have a sailfish water park, all government ran.
Yep.
What is your stance on government owning businesses such as those?
I think that the preferred approach would be for those to be run privately. So, for example, the golf course could be owned by the county, but should they be looking to see whether a private entity could run it more effectively, more efficiently, and perhaps not only save the county money, but then remit money to the county, in essence, for leasing or renting the facilities. Now, the big thing is if you do that, what you don't want to see is the cost to the residents go up more than where it is today. So I think your default position is, yes, let's see if we can bring in a private operator that can do it more effectively, more efficiently. If they can't show that there's a real cost benefit to the resident and or the county, and the county is actually doing a better job, then I'm okay with the county doing it. But I think, again, it's a matter it's not one way or the other. It's what is the most economically efficient way to run this and deliver these services to the residents. And if private enterprise is a better way of doing it, absolutely, that should be your first look. But if after looking at it and analyzing it, you come back and say, wait, the county's doing it even better than they can, then I'm okay with the county continuing to run it.
So let me bring up Sailfish Sands. It's the Hitting Bays golf course. That was an interesting perspective because they initially did lease that out to a private entity, as I agree it should be. But I'm just going to go to the initial bid. They only had one qualifying bid. What would that tell you as a commissioner? They went with that bid and it failed, by the way, quickly.
Not having been part of that process, I mean, I'm going to speculate and say that somebody looked at the economics of it and decided that
they tried it. They stopped paying rent after about 3 months.
Yeah, they couldn't make it work.
Right.
So again, I think you need to go through that process, and before you go out to bid, though, I think you need to do your own analysis on the entire operation, the cost, the quality of the service being provided. Once you've done all that, then you take it out to bid. But again, if you're getting no bidders, what they're telling you is we can't make this work at the same cost levels that you're currently providing it at. And if that's the case, and the county's actually able to do it more efficiently, then there's nothing wrong with the county continuing to run it. But I do think it's something they should look at on a regular basis. I don't think it's something like, well, you make the decision once and that's it. This is something where maybe every 3-4 years, depending on the economic environment and what's happening, whatever, you come back to it once in a while and you look at it again and say, okay, is this still what's in the best interest of the residents in terms of the way we're operating?
Everybody's concerned about growth right now, the traffic and everything. So how would you propose to slow growth here in the county?
Well, I'm not.
Or would you?
I'm not anti-growth, but I am, as we talked about earlier, I am not for unbridled growth by any means. We talked about, development in the western areas, talked about clustering as being a more effective and more efficient way to allow the landowner to grow as it is currently zoned, but again, in a more environmentally friendly way. I think whether you're within the urban development district or not, I think that any project that comes forth to the commission, and this is just my own, I guess, 4-step process. I would say it goes through a 4-step process beyond the zoning and the traditional areas. The first thing I would say is, does it maintain and preserve the fundamental character of the county? Is it consistent with that as it's currently embodied through the comprehensive plan? If it does, then the second thing I would look at is, okay, what are the infrastructure impacts? And that can be roads, sewers, public safety, water, et cetera. Whatever those are, those need to be borne, the cost of those need to be borne by who's ever developing the project. It should not be passed on to taxpayers. And in that regard, too, one of the things that people have said to me, and I'm trying to look into this a little more deeply, is that there are times when the staff will come back and they'll point out to the commission deficiencies, particularly when it comes to infrastructure, and it could be schools. Mm-hmm. And something will get passed anyways. That is, to me, is a big, big concern. So infrastructure has got to be borne, costs have got to be borne by the developer, and the impacts have to be mitigated by the developer. The third thing is, if there's any kind of accommodation that's given to the developer that enhances the value of what they're going to bring forth, there has to be a concurrent or greater benefit to the residents of the county. And then the fourth thing is, if it meets the first three, is there community support? You know, when the developer goes out and says, conceptually, here's what we'd like to do, and you get a chance for the community to weigh in on it, is there actually support for that development? And if there's not, the commissioners, in my opinion, have to really step back and say, well, why would we approve this? You know, if the community doesn't see some type of real benefit to this type of development. And then I guess I'll add a fifth thing, and that is that, you know, as I mentioned earlier, Palm Beach County has 37 municipalities. So they are responsible for their own local zoning, landscaping requirements, all those types of things. Martin County only has 4. So that means that the county is not only a county government, but it's also the local government of first resort. So because of that, you have the CRAs, Community Redevelopment mm-hmm. Agencies. So you have Port Salerno, you have Hobe Sound. I think you've got 6 or 7 in total. So they, in some ways, almost take on the role in terms of looking at their communities and wanting to preserve the character and ambience of that community. They kind of take that role on, and they're feeding that information into the commission. So, you know, the other thing you want to do is, as you do develop, you want to make sure that, again, the ambience or the character of each of these individual areas that exist, you want to try and, again, perpetuate or even enhance and improve upon that. And so I think it's very, very, that's I guess I would say is a fifth element that I would look at when considering any kind of development proposal.
Where would you cut spending?
I'll be real honest with you. I'm just starting to take a serious look at the budget. I suspect that there are opportunities. I'm a run lean and mean kind of guy, but I'm not prepared at this point to because I just haven't spent enough time. And of course, they're in the budget process right now. I haven't spent enough time really looking at the budget to say, okay, I would feel comfortable advocating for cuts, you know, here.
Right.
So,
how do you feel about term limits?
Big supporter. We talked about this last time too. I mentioned a quote from George Mason, but I found an even better quote that I liked, which was Thomas Jefferson, where he basically said that one of the great things about term limits is that the people who govern ultimately become the governed. And so when you realize you're going to ultimately become the governed, you should be really thinking about whatever it is you do when you're in the governing position. So no, I'm a big proponent of term limits. I think having fresh ideas, fresh voices, fresh perspectives on challenges and problems is very, very important. And so I think for a county commissioner, I think 2 terms is more than enough. And I know that term limits don't exist within the county right now. I would be an advocate for putting that onto the ballot. But if I'm fortunate enough to be elected here in the county, I would not serve more than 2 terms. If I were fortunate enough to do that, after 8 years, I'd be like, hey, it's somebody else's turn now.
Frank, I heard it. You've said it here on recording. We have candidates that come through here, and before they're elected, they always say that. And it seems like once they're elected, it goes it goes someplace in the circular file,
well,
you know.
Well, I think that's why, again, that statement by Jefferson is so important, because like he said, one of the I guess guideposts are that if you know you have to, if you're in a governing position but you know you're going to have to be returned to the general population, and you're now going to be the governed, it should make you really think long and hard about any actions you take, when you're in that public service role. And no, I'm absolutely committed. In fact, now Tequesta got voted down. We actually proposed term limits in Tequesta. I was one of the
Interesting, okay.
supporters. It's at that level because the village is so small. It's 6,200 people.
Sometimes it's hard to find people, right?
Sometimes it's hard to find people, and sometimes if you're so close to the voters there,
Right.
that I think what people were saying is, look, if we got somebody who's really, really good and we really, really like him or her, we'll term limit them by our votes. And there is an argument to be made for that. But as you said, the problem is a lot of times people get in office and then they don't want to leave.
Right.
They get used to
Pretty
being
comfortable.
in that governing position. But then again, I think you lose the opportunity again, as I said earlier, for fresh ideas, fresh perspectives. So I think term limits is important, and I would, as I said, advocate putting that before the voters in Martin County.
Well, you have just 3 minutes. I have so many more questions, but we've covered a lot here today, and I really appreciate your time. I want to give you a few minutes here. Tell us your favorite quote, because I like it, and how people can reach out and support you, and what's next on your time frame here for meeting with folks.
Yeah, my favorite quote is from Benjamin Franklin, where he basically says, if you're willing to trade your liberty for security, you deserve neither. There's always a balancing act there. But by the same token, when people talk about security, it depends on how you define that. I mean, to me, what's really critical from a public safety standpoint is safe environments, safe communities, because when you have safety, then you have the freedom for that community to really flourish. And so I think sometimes people will say, well, if you're advocating for safety, you're advocating for strong public safety. Somehow that's an impingement on freedom, and it shouldn't be. Not at all. Not if it's done the right way. As far as supporting me, our website will be going up this afternoon. I am getting out in the community.
I'll post it on my Facebook page and the YouTube when it's up.
I appreciate that. And we're going to do a listening tour, so there'll be a schedule of events coming up fairly soon where I'm going to be going to different parts of the county and inviting people to come in and have coffee and just sit down and talk about the issues and things that really concern them. In addition to that, we're going to do a series of emails. I think there's 30,000 voters who have given Martin County Supervisor their emails. So for those people, we'll be sending out emails bi-weekly where we'll address very specifically some of the topics we've touched on today, from public safety to growth and development to taxes to term limits to the impact of state actions that are impeding or local control. So there'll be a series of emails that will be coming out and touching on all these topics.
Frank D'Ambra III, running in Commission District 3. Thank you so much for spending time with us today.
I really appreciate it.
You didn't know what questions we were going to ask. You did
not.
Fantastic. It's been a great hour. Appreciate you tuning in, and good luck on the trail.
Thanks, Casey.
Thank you.
To WSTU.